In a quiet suburb, where cozy homes hide behind well-kept hedges, one man returns home a little earlier than usual. The day had seemed like a good one, until the wind carried fragments of a conversation through the window that changed everything. A normal evening suddenly turned into a point of no return. What do you do when betrayal isn't far away, but sitting in your own living room? When lies live under the same roof, when someone is plotting to destroy you quietly, from the inside, like a cancer disguised as love. He could have screamed. He could have stormed into the house, shattered cups, hurled accusations. But he did something far more terrifying. He stayed calm. And calmness is the beginning of war. When you're no longer burning with emotion, but led by cold calculation. Because sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one who loses control. It's the one who gains it in their darkest hour. Greetings, my dear friend. I am very happy that you are watching my video, and I will be even happier if you subscribe to my channel. This will make me even happier. Let's get started. Samuel Spencer maneuvered his sedan through the curving streets of the quiet suburb, the energy from the day's educational conference still humming inside him. As a dedicated high school history teacher, these moments, where ideas sparked and passion for teaching deepened, were the kind that refueled his soul. The digital clock on the dashboard read 4:30 p.m., earlier than he usually wrapped up. A pleasant surprise, perfect for one of his impromptu ice cream runs with the kids. As he pulled into the driveway of the humble two-story house he shared with his wife Nina and their two young children, something in the window caught his attention, the soft flutter of living room curtains. He smiled, imagining the children sneaking peeks from behind the glass, preparing to leap into his arms. Grabbing his briefcase, brimming with lesson plans and new strategies, he stepped out of the car. As he approached the front steps, keys ready, he heard something that made him stop cold. Nina's voice floated clearly through the open window, her tone hushed and conniving. "Claire, trust me," she was saying. "Once he finishes paying off the kids' tuition, I'm filing. I'll say he's been abusive. Then Reed and I can live off his money with full custody." The words struck Samuel like a sucker punch. He stood frozen, hand suspended in midair near the doorknob, his breath catching in his throat. A surge of rage flared inside him, sharp and sudden, urging him to throw the door open and confront her. But Samuel was not a man who acted on impulse. He swallowed hard, willing himself to stay grounded. Where his thoughts were usually filled with historical figures and student debates, a new kind of mental discipline took root. Without a sound, he backed away from the door, turned, and returned to his car. He started the engine and drove off, his mind spinning until he reached the tranquil pathways of Oakwood Park. The area was nearly deserted, save for a few joggers and dog walkers moving through the fading afternoon light. Samuel parked and wandered over to a bench beside the duck pond, staring blankly at the shifting water. His hands, steady tools in the classroom, now shook as he retrieved his phone. His thumb hovered over Nina's name before veering away. Instead, he scrolled to a different contact. Amelia Hawthorne, divorce attorney. As the call rang, his thoughts sharpened into a focused clarity. He needed evidence. He had to protect what he'd earned. Most importantly, he had to shield his children from the storm that was coming. "Hawthorne Law Office," came the receptionist's voice, brisk and businesslike. "This is Samuel Spencer," he said evenly. "I need to see Amelia. It's urgent. A divorce matter." There was a brief pause before she responded. "We can fit you in tomorrow morning at 7. Will that work for you?" He nodded, then replied, "Yes, that's perfect. Thank you." Ending the call, Samuel's eyes drifted to a couple walking along the pond, hands intertwined, their laughter light and effortless. For a moment he wondered if he and Nina had ever been that carefree, or had their marriage always been a performance, well-rehearsed but hollow. He stood from the bench and squared his shoulders. The pain hadn't lessened, but it was now shaped into something usable, purposeful. Driving back home, Samuel let the beginnings of a plan crystallize. He refused to be a casualty of Nina's deceit. By the time he pulled into the driveway once more, the sun was sliding below the horizon, painting long shadows across the pavement. He paused to collect himself before stepping inside to the familiar sounds of cartoons and laughter. "Daddy!" His 6-year-old Ella barreled into him, her pigtails bouncing with each joyful step. He scooped her into his arms, breathing in the faint scent of her strawberry-scented shampoo. "Hey there, princess," he said, his voice calm and smooth despite the storm within. "How was your day?" she chirped, launching into an animated recap of kindergarten adventures. As she spoke, Samuel glanced across the room to see Nina watching him, her smile bright and undisturbed. Picture perfect. "Welcome home, sweetheart," she said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour." Samuel returned her smile, careful and controlled. "Sounds great. I'll go clean up." As he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, his mind was already racing. Every detail mattered now. He'd need to keep up appearances for a while, long enough to gather what he needed. The war had begun, and Samuel intended to fight smart. Over the next several days, Samuel played the role of the loving husband with quiet precision. Cheerful greetings each morning, shared meals with light conversation, and bedtime stories with warm hugs. Not once did he let his guard slip. Then, late one evening, after Nina had gone to sleep, he moved silently through the house. One by one, he placed small surveillance devices in strategic corners. The first camera covered the living room's couch and entrance. The next, positioned above a cabinet, overlooked the kitchen. A third went in the office where financial records were stored. Each motion was careful and calculated, his hands no longer trembling. As he worked, his thoughts returned to his earlier call with Amelia Hawthorne, the one that marked the start of his transformation from stunned victim to silent strategist. The formidable divorce attorney sat in composed silence, absorbing every word of Samuel's account with clinical precision. She gave a tight nod, her expression showing a flicker of approval. "Wise move, not confronting her immediately," Amelia commented. "We need irrefutable evidence. Keep recording audio and document every single thing." Then she leaned closer, her voice edged with urgency. "And Samuel, whatever you do, don't let her catch on. The surprise factor is crucial." He nodded, his expression darkening. "Understood." "I've already begun reviewing the financial records," he said. "I'll bring everything you ask for." Now, as he carefully concealed the last hidden camera, a cold, resolute calm took root in his chest. He was done playing the fool Nina assumed he'd always be. The following morning, Nina breezed into the kitchen with her usual cheery demeanor, all effortless smiles and casual banter as she laid out her day. "I've got a meeting with a new client," she said, slathering jam on her toast. "Could run late, so don't wait up." Samuel gave a subtle nod and lifted his mug. "Hope it goes well," he replied with even calm. She gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, a mechanical gesture born of routine, before grabbing her bag and heading out. Once the door shut behind her, Samuel stared at the empty space she'd occupied. How many of those client meetings were just cover for secret trysts with Reed? That afternoon, instead of heading to work, Samuel sat parked down the street, engine off, watching the house from a distance. His jaw clenched as a sleek sports car pulled into the driveway. Reed Baxter stepped out, smug, stylish, every bit the polished real estate broker. Samuel didn't move as Reed strutted to the door. He simply gripped the wheel tighter as Nina welcomed him in with a flirtatious laugh and a playful tug on his arm. He forced himself to stay composed. Everything was being documented now, every deception, every violation. Inside, oblivious to the hidden cameras, Nina and Reed lounged on the couch like it was their own home. Reed uncorked a bottle of wine, Samuel's wine, a gift from a grateful student's parent, and poured 2 generous glasses. "Won't be long now," Reed said, taking a sip. "When this is done, Samuel won't even know what hit him." Nina chuckled, the sound sharp and mocking. "He's so clueless. Honestly, it's laughable." Reed slipped an arm around her shoulders, his hand sliding down her thigh. "And once we've drained him dry," he murmured, "we can stop pretending. No more sneaking around. No more lies." Her eyes gleamed, hunger and excitement mingling in her gaze. "I can't wait," she whispered. "Every time he goes on about his students or his beloved history lectures, I want to scream." Reed gave a slow smirk. "You won't have to listen much longer. We'll bleed him dry, and then some." That night, Samuel sat alone in the glow of his monitor, watching the footage play out. His fingers dug into the edge of the desk, knuckles white, but his voice was steady when he called Amelia. "I've got more evidence," he told her. "You'll want to see this." The next day, Samuel arrived at Amelia's office and placed a USB stick in her palm. "Everything's on there," he said plainly. She inserted it into her laptop and scanned the files, her eyes flicking across the screen. "You've done well," she said, her tone brisk and professional. "With this and the financials, we're building a solid case." "But we're not stopping here," she added with conviction. "The more ammunition we have, the stronger our position when it's time to strike." Samuel nodded without hesitation. "I'll keep digging," he promised. As he stepped into the corridor, a storm of emotions twisted inside, burning anger toward Nina, revulsion for Reed, but also a steadier current. Determination. He wasn't their victim anymore. The board had flipped, and he was in control now. They just didn't know it yet. While Samuel secretly continued gathering evidence, a different storm brewed at work. The school board had called an emergency meeting, rumors swirling about major budget reductions. Word had it the history department was first on the chopping block. In the staff lounge, Samuel sat among his colleagues, the air heavy with anxiety as whispers passed between teachers. "They can't just cut us," Sarah, who taught American history, said quietly. "What about the students?" Mark, the world history teacher, sighed in frustration. "It's always the same. Budget gets tight and history's the first to go." "They'll keep math and science," he muttered. "Maybe toss in one token humanities class and call it a day." Samuel listened, his jaw tight, mind already moving toward action. Then he stood. "We're not going down without a fight," he said, loud enough to cut through the room's tension. "We need to show the board and the parents why cutting history is a mistake they'll regret." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Sarah looked up. "What do you suggest we do?" A flicker of purpose lit Samuel's eyes. "We organize, rally the parents, build a presentation that proves how vital history is, not just to education, but to the students' futures." In the days that followed, Samuel redirected all his energy into the cause. He hosted meetings, connected with parents, and crafted a persuasive case to bring before the board. Where once his nights had been consumed by betrayal and grief, they were now filled with purpose, resolve, and a new fight worth winning. Late one night, Samuel sat hunched over a sea of spreadsheets, carefully shaping the key points for an important upcoming meeting, when Nina strolled into the room. She leaned against the edge of his desk, her posture relaxed, but deliberately posed. "Why are you putting so much effort into this?" she asked, her tone dripping with forced concern, barely concealing her irritation. Samuel bit back the response that rose to the surface. Instead, he met her eyes calmly. "Every position matters, Nina. Everyone contributes something." She let out a derisive laugh and gave a dismissive roll of her eyes, clearly unmoved by his words. "Whatever. Just don't forget we're having dinner with the Andersons on Friday. Try to be on time for once." She turned and walked out, her hips swaying in a way that used to captivate him. Now, he barely noticed. He simply returned to his work, his expression unshaken. The dinner engagement with the Andersons, close associates of Reed Baxter, remained on the calendar, just one more piece in the elaborate performance of a flawless domestic life. When Friday evening arrived, Samuel played his part with effortless charm, pouring wine and guiding conversation with practiced ease. Even when Reed appeared unannounced partway through the meal, Samuel didn't flinch. "Hope I'm not crashing the party," Reed said with a grin that felt more like a provocation than a greeting. "I was nearby and thought I'd swing by." Samuel caught the brief electric exchange between Nina and Reed, a glance too long, a spark too familiar. He lifted his glass in effortless hospitality. "Not at all. You're always welcome." As the evening carried on, Samuel noted the subtle signals between the two, the fleeting brushes of hands, the covert glances. Each moment registered in his mind, quietly filed away with precision. "So, Samuel," Mr. Anderson said, swirling his wine, "Nina mentioned your department's been facing challenges. Budget cuts?" Samuel gave a measured nod. "Yes, the school board is considering reductions. We're building a case to show how crucial the history program really is." Reed let out a low chuckle, dry and dismissive. "All that for a subject half the kids sleep through?" Samuel offered a polite smile. "I get it. History isn't everyone's favorite, but without it, we lose our grasp of who we are and where we're going," Nina interjected, her voice breezy but sharp. "Let's not turn this into a lecture, darling. Who's ready for dessert?" She vanished into the kitchen, and Samuel noticed the way Reed was looking at him, calculated, almost measuring. Was it intimidation? Contempt? Either way, Samuel didn't shy from it. He welcomed it. When the guests had gone and Nina had disappeared upstairs without a word, Samuel sat alone in the soft glow of his study lamp. He opened a slim notebook and began recording small, critical observations from the night, details that might seem insignificant now. But he knew better. He then turned to his laptop and typed out a message to Amelia. "Another piece fell into place tonight," he wrote. "We're nearly there." With a quiet click, he sent the message, then leaned back in his chair. Through the window, stars scattered the sky like sparks before a storm. He could feel it coming, not a storm to endure, but one to command. Closing the laptop, his thoughts shifted to the presentation ahead. Two battlegrounds loomed before him, the fragile illusion of his family life and the uncertain survival of his calling as an educator. But he would give up neither. He would not let Nina unravel their family, and he would not sit idle while bureaucrats gutted the heart of his profession. He refocused, diving back into his notes with renewed energy. He had always taught his students about the figures who faced overwhelming odds and still carved their names into history. Now he would walk that same path. Through the quiet hours, Samuel worked with steady intensity. This wasn't only about preserving his job or holding together a fractured marriage. This was about securing his future, protecting his children, and defending the ideals that shaped who he was. When the day of the school board meeting finally arrived, Samuel stood before a full auditorium. Parents, teachers, and board members filled the room, their expressions ranging from curious to guarded. This was the moment that could change everything. He drew a breath, gathering his thoughts. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was fighting for history, even as his own life unraveled behind the scenes. But unlike the quiet war at home, this battle would be fought in the open. "Members of the board, colleagues, and concerned families," he began, voice steady and resolute. "This conversation is about more than numbers. It's about what kind of education we value and what kind of future we're preparing our children for." He guided them through his presentation with clarity and passion, supported by compelling data and powerful testimonials from his students. Gradually, the room shifted. Bodies leaned in, eyes sharpened, doubt gave way to interest. He painted a stark picture of a future devoid of historical understanding, a world doomed to echo its darkest mistakes. "If we eliminate history," Samuel said, his voice deep with conviction, "we're not just trimming a subject, we're cutting our children off from their roots, from the lessons of the past, and from the tools they need to build something better." The room erupted into applause as Samuel stepped down from the podium. A few board members nodded in quiet approval, and groups of parents leaned together, murmuring with animated energy. As the final moments of the meeting wrapped, the school superintendent approached him with a broad, satisfied smile. "That was quite a presentation, Mr. Spencer. Definitely gave us something to mull over." Samuel offered a small nod and a measured smile. "I appreciate that. I just hope it resonated the way I intended." It wasn't until he was alone behind the wheel, navigating the stillness of late-night streets, that the gravity of the evening settled in. He had done it. Not only had he rescued the history department from being gutted, but he'd also been appointed as its new head. A surge of pride rose in him, temporarily drowning out the chaos that had defined his private life. But as he pulled onto his street, something out of place grabbed his attention. A sleek, unfamiliar car idling just past his driveway. His stomach tightened. The vehicle was instantly recognizable, Reed Baxter's flashy, unmistakable coupe. Stepping inside, Samuel found Nina and Reed on the couch, seated too closely, speaking in hushed tones and sharing laughter too soft to be innocent. At the sound of the door, they quickly separated. Nina's expression flickered, guilt flashing across her face before she replaced it with a bright, unnatural smile. "Samuel, you're home early. Reed just stopped by to drop off some legal paperwork for the case." Samuel raised an eyebrow, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Is that so? Pretty convenient timing, right as I walk in." Reed stood, smoothing the front of his suit with a practiced air, his grin tight. "Hey, Samuel, hope it's okay I dropped in without notice. You know how it goes. Work doesn't exactly keep business hours." Samuel gave a polite nod, jaw tight. "Of course, always good to see you." Reed took the hint and made a swift exit, offering a few parting pleasantries as he slipped out. Samuel turned back to Nina, his expression unreadable. "I've got some news. The meeting was a win. Not only is the department safe, I've been promoted to lead it." Her eyes widened, surprise flashing across her features. "Oh, wow, that's something. Congratulations." He studied her face, hearing the flatness behind the words. "Thanks. Thought maybe we could celebrate. Finally open that champagne we've been saving." Her smile faltered just for a moment, before she caught herself. "Of course, love, I just need a minute to freshen up." As she headed upstairs, Samuel allowed a slow smile to spread across his face. He'd seen the panic in her eyes, the quick glance toward her phone. She was no doubt texting Reed, scrambling to reschedule whatever plans they had made. He moved into the kitchen, retrieved the chilled bottle and 2 flutes, and popped the cork. As the champagne fizzed, he wondered how many more fake celebrations he'd have to endure before everything collapsed. The next morning arrived sooner than he expected. Samuel woke already deep in thought, running through his schedule for the day. A crucial lunch with Amelia loomed. Today was a turning point. While he brewed coffee, Nina wandered in, looking pale and disheveled. "Ugh, my head is pounding. That champagne hit harder than I expected." He passed her a mug, his voice gentle. "This might help. You weren't yourself last night. I thought maybe you were coming down with something." She gave a quiet thank you, not meeting his eyes as she took a sip. He noticed a smear of lipstick clinging to the edge of her mouth, a bold color he knew she never wore. "I've got a packed schedule," he said casually. Back-to-back meetings all afternoon. Don't wait for me to eat. She nodded quickly, a hint of relief flickering across her face. That works out. I've got a late meeting, too. Might just grab dinner with the team. As he walked out the door, Samuel allowed himself a dry, knowing smile. He had a decent guess who she really meant by team. The hours flew by in a haze of lectures and paperwork. When lunch arrived, Samuel met Amelia at a tucked-away cafe on the far edge of the city. The sharp, no-nonsense attorney listened closely as Samuel filled her in on recent developments. "Well done," she said, her voice crisp and composed. "The groundwork's solid. I think it's time to move. Are you ready?" His eyes steeled. "More than ready." Amelia laid out the final phase of their plan with methodical clarity, her tone low but firm. By the time they rose to leave, Samuel felt a deep current of purpose flowing through him. Everything was nearly in place, and neither Nina nor Reed saw it coming. That afternoon, Samuel took swift, calculated action. He drained every joint account and moved the funds into an account solely in his name. He canceled their shared credit cards and notified the children's school that all academic decisions would now go through him alone. As he drove home, his phone vibrated. A text from Nina lit up the screen. "All the cards are getting declined." "What's going on?" He didn't answer. She'd find out soon enough. The moment Samuel had dreaded finally arrived. He was alone in his study when the front door burst open with a thunderous bang. The staccato rhythm of Nina's heels struck the hardwood like gunshots as she charged toward him. "What the hell is going on, Samuel?" she snapped, her voice trembling with fury. Her face was flushed, eyes blazing with disbelief. "Why are all of our cards declined? Why can't I get into any of our accounts?" Samuel looked up from his desk, his expression calm, unreadable. "You already know why, Nina," he said, his tone flat and measured. "Or maybe Reed can fill in the blanks," he added, voice laced with quiet venom. Nina's color drained instantly. "Well, what are you saying?" she asked, faltering. "Don't insult me," Samuel said coldly. "I know. About the affair, the secret divorce plans, the lies you were getting ready to spin. You thought I was clueless?" Her initial panic gave way to anger. "You had no right to dig through my private stuff," she shouted, voice rising. "No right?" Samuel stood, his composed mask cracking to reveal the storm underneath. "I had every right. You're still my wife, though you've clearly forgotten what that means somewhere between your hotel meetups with Reed." He grabbed a thick binder from his desk and slammed it down. "It's all in here. Surveillance footage, text logs, bank records showing you've been siphoning money into a hidden account. Your little operation is finished." Nina's gaze darted from the folder back to him, realization hitting like a punch. "You destroyed everything," she hissed. Samuel didn't flinch. "No," he said quietly. "You did. I've already hired legal counsel. You'll be hearing from her. You should start looking for your own lawyer. You're going to need one." She whirled around and stormed out, unleashing a stream of curses and threats as she went. Samuel slowly lowered himself back into the chair, heart pounding. The confrontation he'd dreaded for weeks was over, but this was just the opening salvo in a long, bitter war. The days that followed were a haze of silent tension and calculated avoidance. Samuel moved into the guest bedroom and made a point to steer clear of Nina at all costs. She oscillated between rage-filled tirades and syrupy manipulation, but Samuel stayed unmoved. Then, one night while helping the kids with their homework, a message flashed on his phone from an unfamiliar number. "Think you've won? This isn't over." He deleted it instantly. Reed had finally entered the fray, just as expected. Let them scheme. Let them circle. Samuel was prepared for every twist they might throw his way. What he hadn't expected was the extent of their desperation, or how far they'd go to keep their plan alive. The sabotage began subtly, Whispers in break rooms, suspicious glances in corridors, conversations that abruptly died the moment he walked into the room. Then came the call from the principal's office. "Samuel, I'll be frank," said Principal Harriet Dawson, her expression stern. "Serious concerns have been raised. You're being accused of misappropriating department funds." Samuel's mind raced. Of course, it was Nina and Reed escalating their game. "What kind of allegations?" he asked steadily. She slid a folder toward him. "These documents suggest you've been diverting school funds. With your recent promotion, this could be catastrophic." Samuel flipped through the contents, jaw tightening. The forgeries were disturbingly convincing. If he hadn't been anticipating sabotage, they might have fooled him. "These documents are fake," he said, eyes locked on hers. "Give me 1 day. I'll bring proof. Not just that I'm innocent, but of who's really behind this." She studied him for a long moment, then gave a reluctant nod. "You've always had an impeccable record. You have 24 hours. But if you can't prove this—" "I will," he said softly, rising from his chair. "Thank you." As he walked out of her office, his mind was already moving. Since becoming department head, he'd maintained airtight records of every transaction. That diligence was about to serve him well. While Nina slept upstairs, Samuel spent the night sifting through spreadsheets, emails, and financial reports. With meticulous care, he assembled a comprehensive packet that not only debunked the accusations, but identified a breach, one that could only have been carried out by someone with intimate knowledge of his department's inner workings. By dawn, he was ready. He presented the evidence to Principal Dawson and the school board. The facts were irrefutable. Samuel was not only exonerated, but the data pointed to a coordinated external attempt to frame him, one that reeked of personal vendetta. "This is incredibly thorough," a board member commented, flipping through the report. "Mr. Spencer, not only are you cleared, but we clearly have a serious security issue to investigate." As the meeting adjourned, Samuel felt a rare moment of peace settle over him. He'd survived the ambush, but he knew better than to think the war was done. That night, as he stepped back into the house, he found Nina pacing the living room, her every movement tense with anxiety. Her face was a tempest barely restrained. "You actually believe you've outmaneuvered me?" she snapped the instant he entered. "How dare you accuse me of setting a trap?" Samuel stood his ground, his demeanor unshaken and composed. "I never pointed a finger at you, Nina," he said evenly. "But the fact that you assumed I did says a lot." "Feeling exposed?" Nina's expression contorted with fury. "You're not going to win this," she spat. "I swear, Samuel, I will destroy you." She brushed past him, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the walls. Samuel released a long breath and sank into the nearest chair, exhaustion pressing down like a lead blanket. Reaching for his phone, he made the call. Amelia answered almost immediately. "It's done," he said. "They tried to bury me with false embezzlement charges. I cleared my name." Amelia's response was calm, edged with quiet intensity. "Good, then it's our turn. Time to go on the offensive." "We file for divorce," Samuel said, "and we don't hold back." After the call ended, he sat in silence, eyes drifting to the photographs on the mantel, frozen moments from a different life. His children's smiles anchored him. Every betrayal, every sleepless night, every deception had brought him here. He would protect them at any cost. The storm he had anticipated had finally broken. But Samuel Spencer was no longer the man weathering it. He was the storm, and lightning pulsed in his grip. The courthouse loomed ahead, its austere stone walls casting long shadows. Samuel straightened his tie, an automatic gesture, not a vain one, and ascended the steps with deliberate intent. At his side walked Amelia Hawthorne, his battle-hardened divorce attorney. Her briefcase swung with the weight of damning truth, and her expression radiated focused determination. As they pushed through the heavy doors, Samuel's gaze landed on Nina and her attorney whispering at the defense table. Her eyes, once warm, now gleamed with cold desperation. He didn't flinch. "Let me take it from here," Amelia murmured. "You've done what you needed to. Now we let the facts do the damage." Samuel gave a curt nod and sat down. The judge entered, a woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, and brought the courtroom to order. "In the matter of Spencer versus Spencer," she began, voice clipped and clear, "we will now hear opening statements." Amelia rose, steady as granite. "Your Honor, this case is not about the breakdown of a marriage. It is about betrayal executed with precision, fraud, manipulation, and an orchestrated attempt to dismantle an innocent man's life." Piece by piece, she laid the foundation: secret bank accounts, forged signatures, surveillance transcripts. She moved with surgical precision. Then came the photographs, undeniable proof. Nina's lawyer, young and visibly unraveling, objected again and again, only to be shut down each time. Samuel watched as fear crept into Nina's eyes with every revelation. When the defense finally took its turn, the lawyer stumbled through half-formed arguments, blaming stress and miscommunication. They were grasping at smoke. In a desperate move, Nina stood and requested to speak directly to the court. The judge raised an eyebrow, then gestured for her to proceed. Nina approached the stand, face sculpted into a pained expression. "Your Honor," she began, voice quivering, "I've made mistakes, but I'm not the monster here. Samuel, he's not what you think. Behind closed doors, he's cruel, cold, controlling. I lived in fear for years, emotionally and yes, even physically." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Samuel's jaw clenched beneath the table, but his face remained unreadable. He had braced for this moment. "Objection," Amelia said crisply as she rose. "These allegations are being raised for the first time. We have ample evidence disproving Mrs. Spencer's claims." The judge nodded sharply. "Proceed." Amelia strode forward and held up a small flash drive. "Exhibit G," she said. "Surveillance footage from the Spencer residence, installed by my client to protect himself and his children after discovering his wife's duplicity and ongoing efforts to falsely incriminate him." The courtroom fell silent as the screen lit up. The footage rolled, Nina screaming, Nina gaslighting, Nina throwing objects in a violent frenzy. Not Samuel. Amelia's tone was glacial. "This is the truth of what occurred behind their walls. Mrs. Spencer was the aggressor." The judge's expression hardened. "Mrs. Spencer," she said sternly, "false allegations of abuse are not only reprehensible, they're criminal. Would you like to amend your statement?" Nina, pale and visibly trembling, gave a wordless, reluctant nod. The remainder of the proceedings passed in a daze. When the judge finally delivered her verdict, her tone left no room for doubt. "Given the overwhelming and indisputable evidence, the court grants Mr. Spencer a divorce on the grounds of infidelity and emotional cruelty. This case is hereby concluded." The courtroom held its breath as the judge rendered his decision. Samuel Spencer would be granted sole custody of his children. His lawyer, Amelia, remained poised as the ruling continued. His former wife was now obligated to pay both spousal and child support. When the gavel fell, Samuel let out a long breath, as though a weight had finally been lifted from his chest. He turned to Amelia, gratitude glimmering in his eyes. "Thanks," he murmured. Amelia gave him a soft, rare smile, one of the few times her typically unshakable demeanor gave way. "You carried the burden, Samuel. I just brought the facts to light. Now let's get you and your kids home." As they left the courtroom, Samuel cast a glance in Nina's direction. She was slumped in her chair, hands covering her face as her shoulders shook. A flicker of something crossed his heart. Perhaps not forgiveness, but a fleeting note of pity. But then the memories surged, the coldness in her eyes, the deliberate cruelty she wielded like a weapon in her attempt to wreck his life. Whatever trace of sympathy remained was gone. As the sun bathed him in warmth outside the courthouse doors, Samuel felt it. This was the beginning of something new. In the weeks that followed, life took on an unfamiliar shape. Samuel was learning what it meant to play both protector and nurturer, to shoulder the full weight of parenting. He noticed the sideways glances in the supermarket aisles, and his phone buzzed daily with messages, some filled with support, others laced with bitterness from Nina. One sunlit Saturday, as Samuel helped his daughter Ella assemble her science project at the kitchen table, the doorbell chimed. When he opened the door, Claire stood there, Nina's sister, looking pale and worn down, her eyes rimmed with red as if sleep had long eluded her. "Samuel," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I didn't know where else to go. Can we talk?" Samuel hesitated briefly before stepping aside. She walked in, and they sat across from each other at the table, Ella's colorful display board lying between them like an emotional buffer. "I'm so sorry," Claire burst out, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I believed her. I didn't know. She told me it was you." He slid a tissue box her way. "You weren't the only one she fooled, Claire." She dabbed at her eyes, trying to steady herself. "When I heard that recording, I thought she was finally being honest about what you supposedly did. I didn't realize she was orchestrating it all, cheating, lying, twisting everything." "Would you have believed me if I'd told you the truth back then?" Samuel asked, his voice gentle but laced with skepticism. Claire's posture slumped. "I want to say yes, but she's my sister." Or was. "After what I've learned, I don't know who she is anymore." Samuel gave a solemn nod. He understood the pain of having to cut ties with someone once so close. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I needed to say this to you, to let you know I never meant to be part of what she did. I didn't want to stay silent anymore." After she left, Samuel remained seated in stillness. Her words didn't undo the pain of what had happened, but they chipped away at the isolation he'd felt. It was a beginning. A small crack in the wall, a sign that not everyone had turned away. Later that night, with the children fast asleep, Samuel sat alone in his study. The glow of his computer screen lit the dim room. A blank page blinked back at him. He didn't think, he just began to type. He wrote about betrayal, about the confusion and disbelief that comes from realizing the person you trusted most was a stranger in disguise, about the strength it took to safeguard not just his children, but his own sense of self. As the words flowed, he saw that this wasn't just catharsis. It was something more, something that could be of value to others navigating the same storm. By the time the first rays of sunlight broke through the window, his first chapter was complete. The next day, Samuel reached out to a handful of old friends, men who had weathered their own divorces. Over coffee, they shared their stories, their pain, and their hard-earned wisdom. From those conversations, a seed of an idea began to grow. "What if we built something together?" Samuel proposed. "A space for men going through this. False accusations, manipulation, custody battles, the whole mess." They nodded, and within weeks, that vision took form. Every week, they met at the local community center, a circle of men coming together, supporting one another, rebuilding what had been broken. One evening, after one of their meetings, Samuel's phone lit up with a name he hadn't seen in a while, Nina. He stared at the screen, then answered. "Samuel," her voice was thin, trembling. "Please, I need to talk." His jaw clenched. "We've said all there is to say, Nina. Please," she pleaded. "I've lost everything, my job, my friends. Even Claire won't speak to me. I know I hurt you." "Mistakes?" Samuel cut in, voice steely. This wasn't a slip-up. You made conscious, calculated choices to destroy me and take away what I love most, and now you're facing the consequences. I'm not that person anymore, she insisted. I've changed. I see it all now. Can't we try again? No, he said firmly, his voice final. You chose your path. Now you live with it. He ended the call. Something inside him finally snapped. The last thread connecting him to the person he used to be. And with that, the past was no longer holding him hostage. The months that followed brought calm, a steadier rhythm, a life he was finally proud to call his own. Samuel was thriving in his role as department chair, his innovative teaching methods drawing attention from educators across the state. But it wasn't the professional praise or even the demands of raising his children alone that gave him the deepest sense of fulfillment. On one crisp autumn morning, standing in front of his students, he felt that familiar charge, the feeling that today's lesson would reach beyond curriculum. This wasn't something found in any course outline. Today, Samuel wasn't just a history teacher. He was stepping into the role of a mentor, guiding his students through life's more difficult lessons. Today, he said, his voice firm and resonant, we're going to talk about resilience, what it means to endure hardship and emerge stronger. The room quieted, his students drawn in with full attention. Most of them had caught pieces of Samuel's past, whispers, small-town rumors. Until now, he'd never addressed any of it directly. History is full of people who rose from the edge of despair, he went on. Think about the American Revolution, the Civil Rights Movement, the fall of the Berlin Wall. He paused to let the gravity of those events settle in their minds. But resilience isn't a relic of history. It lives in us. It's something we build, one challenge at a time, he said, linking historical triumphs to their own lives. As he shared parts of his own story alongside the struggles of historical figures, he noticed a shift. Students who usually slouched in their seats were now leaning forward. Those who carried unseen weights sat up a little straighter, their eyes lighting with recognition, perhaps for the first time realizing their own strength. Hardship doesn't get the final say, Samuel told them. Your response, that's what defines your story. You've all got something powerful inside you. Never let anyone take that away. When the bell rang, the students gathered their things, but many lingered. A few paused to thank him. Others offered quiet stories of their own, testimonies of pain, survival, and hope. The feeling swelling in Samuel's chest wasn't just pride. It was something more lasting. As he packed up for the day, ready to head home, a soft knock pulled his attention. At the door stood a woman in a tailored suit, a sleek portfolio tucked under her arm. Mr. Spencer? She asked with a polite nod, extending her hand. I'm Sable Brown, with Pinnacle Publishing. Surprised, Samuel motioned for her to come in. She took a seat with polished ease, her expression purposeful. I'll get straight to it, she said, leaning forward slightly. Your story has made its way beyond this school, beyond this town. Your resilience, your pursuit of truth, the work you've done, it's powerful. We believe it could reach and help so many others. Samuel blinked, momentarily stunned. You're saying? She smiled warmly. We'd like to offer you a book deal, your journey in your own words. What do you think? For a long moment he was speechless. Then slowly, a quiet resolve settled into his features. If sharing it can help someone avoid the darkness I went through, then yes. It's a story worth telling. Sarah assured him that a contract would be on its way shortly, then took her leave, leaving Samuel alone at his desk, overwhelmed but grounded. His phone buzzed. A message from the sitter reminding him it was time to pick up his kids. Still dazed but smiling, he gathered his things and headed out. Outside, the cool evening air greeted him. He spotted his children by the car, Ella waving with an excited grin, Mason proudly holding up a crayon drawing. Samuel's heart surged. Everything they'd survived had brought them here, to this moment of peace and connection. He hadn't just weathered the storm, he had rebuilt something whole. As they drove home beneath a sky brushed with the soft colors of sunset, Samuel glanced in the rearview mirror. His kids were laughing, their voices full of light. The past, no matter how painful, couldn't touch them now. He smiled quietly. The road behind had been long and unforgiving, marked by betrayal, grief, and uncertainty. But it had led to healing. What once threatened to shatter him had instead shaped him. His scars had become the framework for empathy, strength, and love. As they turned down their street, the last rays of sunlight casting a golden glow across the neighborhood, Samuel felt a calm certainty. Whatever came next, he would face it, steady, unshaken, and full of heart. Our story comes to an end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this story, please check out other videos on this channel. See you soon, my dear friend, my dear